Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's 30-minute webinar, Basic to Breathtaking Scout Event Sites Like a Pro, with Stacy, Steine, and Steve Brown. My name is Britt Lager, and I'll be hosting the webinar today. Before I turn over the webinar to Stacy and Steve, I just want to mention a couple of quick items. So if you have any questions today, Stacy and Steve will be answering the questions at the end of the session, so use the Q&A panel to ask your questions, and we'll get to them at the end. We will also be sending a recording of today's session, and we'll email those instructions to you to access the recording and our slides. So we'll send those to you. Today, I'm joined by Stacy, Steine, and Steve Brown, and I'm just going to share a little bit about their backgrounds as we jump into the session today. So Stacy has spent over 2 decades working in the events industry for nonprofits, agencies, and corporations. She's currently a producer and planner with Target on the Experiential marketing team. Her trademark creative problem solving, strategic thinking, and collaboration skills have helped Stacy produce hundreds of events. Steve is a production account manager at Heroic Productions. Prior to joining the team, he spent 10 years as an on-site meetings producer for Target Creative, ensuring the successful execution of Target's global meetings and events operations. Steve brings a wealth of experience ensuring the same success for Heroic Productions clients. So thank you guys for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is so great. This was something that we've been putting together. This is our second webinar. We look forward to doing more. But I was so excited about this topic, and Stacy was she's one of my favorite people, but one of my favorite co-workers of all time. And she's an expert event planner. And we started talking about some concepts, and this was just right up her alley. It was like the funnest thing I could think about talking with you about this.
Thank you. And I feel the same about you. You are one of my favorite people as well.
Cool. So we got a bunch of cool things we're going to talk about, and the order of events will go as follows. We want to talk about, before you start your venue search, the types of venues, the tips for site visits, following the site visit, what happens after that, and then factors for venue decisions. So like final planning, final decision making. And Stacy and I have actually done a lot of site visits together when we worked at Target together. Sometimes it was daunting, where we would have to look for maybe 20 venues in a 2-3 day period in Hong Kong.
Yep.
A lot in Toronto as well.
Yep.
Toronto was all new territory. It's very sort of interesting to find out what that city has. And so you have all kinds of awesome background into how that works, and whether it be nationally or internationally. So, okay, here are the objectives. Right. So,
yeah.
So
when you're, I think one of the biggest things is, when you're trying to decide where to hold your event, is making sure that you're partnering with the right people at your organization to make sure that the objectives are outlined, making sure everyone knows what you're trying to accomplish. When you're done with that meeting or event, like, what is your goal for people to leave feeling, knowing, or just understanding? If you really need to understand that before you even start to even think about where it should be held.
And it's interesting that a venue actually can be a part of that.
Absolutely.
If it's the right venue, it actually can help facilitate that
Absolutely.
feeling. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, because you may use something completely different if you're trying to train versus maybe inspire. So based on different objectives, your venue is going to hopefully try to match what those objectives are. So it's really important to have those in mind. The numbers in your dates, I mean, those are like just your facts, and hopefully, in most cases, you should have those, the preferred dates that you want to have, and your numbers, like how many people are you expecting, or at least maybe the maximum number that you think you may get, because you don't want to, waste your time in searching for venues that inevitably are not going to work, or at least understand what are their flexibility to, for instance, if you have 500 people and all of a sudden it doubles to 1,000, it's been known to happen. Like, can you change something about it, how you're sitting or something, in order to now accommodate the different sizes?
And I recall, Stacy, that with regards to this thing, you go into a venue visit and you can estimate, you're only estimating your number based on the previous year or previous event space, previous event. And sometimes we are constantly watching that the ticker of who's coming. And so
Yep.
sometimes you really don't know going
You
into
don't.
it. You hope it's going to be about this number, but it might be more, might be less. So you have to
Exactly.
have that plan.
Yeah. And those are some of the parameters that hopefully you partner with, the team that's working on the event together on, the pros and cons. Like, this may have a maximum, and the maximum of this venue is this number. So you all kind of have to work within that parameter and understand that. But if one of the objectives is to never say no to somebody, to say, like, we have to have it fit, then that's part of your consideration.
Yep.
And we've talked about it a little bit already, but what's flexible? Like, are the dates flexible, or is there something happening on that date that you have to have that event on that date? You need to understand that when you're trying to start for the search itself. And then again, are your numbers flexible, or what about the objective is flexible, and so what you can fit in and what you can't. Ask around. Sometimes a lot. We are here in the Twin Cities. We know a lot about the Twin Cities, so I don't necessarily need to get a lot of education, but a lot of times you're going into a city where you don't have any knowledge or have very limited knowledge. So ask around. Sometimes I do a little bit of research and I figure out maybe who are the award-winning vendors in that city. Like, who is the award-winning, like the MPI, Meeting Professionals International, vendor of the year for audiovisual or for catering, and I'll call them and I'll say, what are the venues that you like to work with?
That's smart.
You can even describe to them what type of event you're trying to do and the size, and they may have a recommendation for you. It may not have shown up on your search because you're not familiar with that city.
Yeah. And also, just because they're in town venues doesn't mean you know everything about them. Sometimes things change over, they get remodeled, and sometimes you might even not know about it. So I know you and a lot of people on your team, you're constantly checking in with those places and making sure you know what's going on. And with every event, we'll get to site visits, but even with an event you've done many times in the same place, you go back for a site visit again, because now you have a different perspective.
There's different change of staff.
Staff can be part of it, right?
Staffing can be a huge part of it. So keeping up on the latest and greatest is really important. It's very hard with the online tools we have now. There's a lot of online venue selection tools, like a Cvent or something similar to that you can put in your parameters of the event that you're looking for, and then it'll just come up with options, and some of which you've never even had on your.
Do you find success with it, or is it just a nice little barometer of what might be out there?
I think it is. It can be successful. Of course, you're going to have to follow it up with a lot of information, but even just knowing what's available. We also partner a lot with. I'm a big supporter of partnering with organizations. Partner with the local Convention and Visitors Bureau. Again, they're going to know their venues, and they're going to know what's new as well.
Yeah,
they can help in those searches. In a couple of my organizations we've worked with, we've partnered with organizations like Helms Briscoe that have also helped in venue selection. So they're the experts. That's what they do 100% of their time.
Yep.
So they are up on that. So, use their expertise.
Yeah. Shout out to Helms Briscoe, Karen Bailey.
Exactly.
Okay. How about types of venues?
Yeah, well, there's so many. And of course, these are just a few of them. Of course, your more traditional hotels, convention center, conference centers are really set up to really work with an event. So really, they're more of a full service type of venue. But a lot of times that isn't what's going to meet your objective, or you want something more unique, or
just sheer people you need to attendee sizes.
Whatever. So these are all examples of what we've used in the past. Sporting venues as small as soccer fields, but as large as US Bank Stadium in the Twin Cities. So you use what you can. And maybe the other thing about those is people maybe don't think about those because they're like, that's so big, but there are spaces within those venues that then make it smaller and more intimate for your group. And then you're also giving them access in that particular case to something that maybe the the attendee would never have seen before.
Right.
Like, oh, I'm going here for a business meeting. Oh, and very cool. I'm also looking at the field in between breaks and seeing something I never got
Target
to
Field's
see.
a good example of that. They have a, it's a beautiful venue, but then they have meeting rooms that I wouldn't have known about unless I was in this industry. So that's
absolutely.
Cool
so
space.
Think about those. Working theaters, churches. I literally just had a meeting in March at a church, a working church, because they open up to special events as venues when they're not actually have services. So, and it worked. It's worked very well. Historical buildings, again, lots of these have been hosting events for years, but just keep your search open. Even in large office buildings, a lot of their open spaces, their lobbies or their foyers are so large, and they open them up for venues, for events and for people to come and host meetings there. Sometimes you need to know certain people in order to get that connection in, but ask around. And then I put empty spaces, and that literally is exactly what it is. Like, we have been in parking lots, we have been in
airplane hangars,
hangars, we have been in, like, literally in New York City, an empty lot in between two buildings, and then we built our activation with a tent and everything, and you would have never have known when you walked into that thing that you were not in a building. You
that's
built
the magic,
it there.
right? That's the cool thing.
And then the other part about empty spaces is we've engaged commercial real estate agents sometimes, because, as you can imagine, there are a number of empty commercial buildings that are not in use. And depending on the location, you maybe have a real location you want to be in. So you say, like, I need to be in downtown Pittsburgh, and I can't find something. Do you have anything that would fit this square footage? And they will just show you what's available, because if they can't sell that building and you need to be there for 3 days in the middle of May, they will rent it to you. So
that's so creative that and kind of such a cool wide range of things that you can be looking at. That's not normally what I don't think what people would be considering what you do. So that's fascinating. Just a note, I'm assuming that museums and historical buildings have a lot of stringent rules? Is it a little tricky because if you're bringing gear and I think about the technical parts of
absolutely
it,
yeah,
is it maybe trickier?
It is. It's definitely something that you have to think about, the type of event that's going to go into those, because if you're working around either the hours that they're open or the what is set up there, you may have quicker turnaround times or quicker setup times. So but maybe the atmosphere of where you're going to be is the higher in your objective.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
okay.
But definitely stuff you have to, the art aspect of it is so important, or the location of it is so important, that then you work with your partners to say, like, how can we set this up in an hour and a half? Like, what can we do to set this up in an hour and a half? You may have to say, like, okay, we're not going to have as biggest screen. We're not going to have, you may have to think about some of the things you're willing to give in to in order to have it at that venue. But it's all a matter of, again, what do you want them feeling or understanding when they leave your event?
Right. Cool.
So,
it's cool you have that freedom. That's really cool.
Exactly.
Winston Churchill said, I'm just going to throw this in here, we shape our buildings, therefore they shape us. So this is really very fitting with all that's going on with Notre Dame.
I know. Incredible.
Okay, so now our next category would be tips for the site visit. So again, site visits are something that you and I have gone on many times together in many different places. And this is where I've really been amazed with what all the things that you have to consider. And I would go there with objective as a production partner, trying to make sure I knew logistics, and there's a lot into it, but there's so much more that you have to think about. And I was always fascinated with the details you would give me on why you were considering what you were getting. So let's get into the list of those things. So the first one is the visit time of your event. This is brilliant. Tell us about why that's important.
So that could go to both seasonally if possible. So visiting Minneapolis in January is completely different than visiting Minneapolis in July,
Really?
Unfortunately. So, having that experience of getting to your actual building, in certain weather conditions makes a big difference about how your guests are experiencing it. The other part of that is literally the time of day. If you are having an event that is very specific to an amount of time, like 2 hours, and it has to be at 5 o'clock in the evening, if possible, I think it's great to be able to visit that venue at that time so you understand what is going around normally at that time of day. You may have traffic noise because it's rush hour. You may have commuter walkers that are literally walking through your space.
Yeah.
Like if you're at a convention center, it's
Skyway
public,
or
or Skyway,
Yeah.
it's public. And they may be walking right through your venue, which you want to know about what that guest experience is going to look like. So if possible, visit it when it's going to be experienced for yourself on site as well.
I think that's a fantastic tip. Don't you, Britt?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then see all available spaces. So why, when walking through a venue, if you know you're looking for a room this size, why would you tell us why you look at all available spaces on this specific visit in this room?
So I think sometimes when you work with a venue, especially a venue that has multiple spaces they can offer you, you send them something and you say, I am looking for a room for 200 people, classroom with whatever. And maybe in their mind, they have an idea of what that space is at their venue.
Yeah.
And they are going to show you that space. I actually want to see all of the available spaces that it potentially could fit in. Don't necessarily show me the room that's only going to fit 20, but like show me the one that's going to fit 400. Because I may choose to be in that larger space. So show me all of the different spaces, and not let the venue necessarily select the one that's best for you. You want to be part of that decision with them.
Well, that's what goes with being experienced event planner that you are. But also what you probably are thinking about, and I'm remembering this now, when you do want to see spaces, you also want to think about production offices or green rooms for executives and all that stuff too. You want to know what's adjacent to that. So it's pretty critical.
Yep. You want to see everything that's available, and when you're just sending them information on paper. Yeah. And they're not really understanding what it's going to look like or how much equipment or scenic or decor that you're bringing in there. And it's hard to put that on paper. So you want to be able to see all the potential space at that venue to make sure you understand what's the best space for you.
So talk to an event coordinator. You mean within the venue, you want to talk to that person in person and meet them and have them show you around? Like, tell us why that's critical.
So a lot of times when you're visiting a site, you're going to work with a salesperson, and then you're going to they're going to show you around. But I like to have the event coordinator there with me, the one who's actually going to be implementing the event with you, because they're going to know more about the details of their space, maybe where your rigging points are, maybe where what your Wi-Fi requirements are, so that I'm having the person that actually knows the details and executes the events there with you is very valuable.
And also you get a feel the kind of person you're working with, and you sort of a strange, like, interpersonal communication awareness that you kind of grasp what it's going to be like working with them, and how communicative they're going to be, or all that stuff, right?
You maybe get a feel for how experienced they are, and that makes a difference in your decision.
And venue sustainability plan. Tell us about that. Why you think that's critical?
More and more people are, we skipped over check non-event spaces, although Steve kind of talked about a little bit, which is make sure that you do look at those storage spaces and literally check out the bathrooms, check out the bar. Now I say that, if there's a bar there, because your guests are going to maybe experience that. So you want to experience as much as they are as well. And it's not just about the space you're walking into. It is about what the bathroom experience is going to be if there's only 2 stalls and there's 800 people. So you got to check out everything.
Right. And you know that, and we've learned that in Canada, it's a washroom and not a bathroom.
Correct. Everywhere we go, they call it something different.
Yeah, different.
So luckily they have those icons.
Sorry. Now, venue sustainability. Tell us what you're thinking about when you see, when you're walking a venue about
I mean, more and more I was saying that organizations really have a conscious eye on sustainability. And so you want to ask those questions of your venue, like what do they do? Do they recycle? What do they recycle? Do they compost? Do they compost their food? Do they, like the convention center in Minneapolis they send their extra food to like pig farms. So you know that it is not being wasteful. So more and more, that's an important decision factor in where you're going. So make sure to ask those questions at that point as well.
Okay, that's good to know. That's great that you're actually checking on that. That's great that you're involved in those kind of decisions. Confirm vendor exclusives. So tell us about that. Like you and I were talking about this a little bit earlier, but explain what you mean by exclusives.
Yeah, so a venue may or may not have exclusive vendors that they work with. Examples of those may be audiovisual production. They may have exclusives if it's just a building itself. They may have a list of catering companies that we only can use these 5 catering companies, or you may just have one choice of a catering company. So you want to understand what those exclusives are at that venue, because that may be a very important factor for your organization, and it will make a deciding factor right there. For a lot of my organizations that I've worked with, audiovisual is an extremely important part and can make or break. Your partner, having the best partner is going to make or break. So if you want to be able to work with your valued partner and you want to bring them in, you want to talk about that immediately. And I will also say, like, even if they do have an exclusive, it's negotiable. Like maybe they're willing to partner with them on certain things. So keep that door open and talk to them, and they may be able to negotiate, be able to work together on certain things.
Right. It's I'm sure frustrating if the parameters are put upon you and you can't use a certain AV partner or caterer or something. But we talk about this a lot here. Obviously, we're in the AV business, but it's so crazy how much funding and parts of these budgets go into your hotel stay, your food, and here's the message. The most important reason why they're all sitting in that room needs to be conveyed, and if you don't trust a good partner to be on that, now you're actually sort of wasting that visit and all those people being there. Like, it's so important. It has to be really solid.
Important. So really understanding, and it's very important for all of the organizations I've worked with, that they go in and they want to be able to really value those partnerships, and audiovisual production companies.
It's your message.
Part of it. So.
Okay. So following the site visit, so the site visit is over. You've gone to many places. You're taking lots of notes, typing away, sending reports to the teams, and finding out, you've got a full plan. So what's the follow-up? What do you do after that?
Yeah, I think some of the things that you can do while you're finalizing your decision is work with the venue that you think are your top choices that ask them to show you pictures or even give you references for people who've had similar type of events there. So I think that's useful to have that information. I definitely check references in regards to who they have worked with. I would even see if you can try to find somebody who they don't refer to, who has had an event there, to see, of course they're going to give you references that are their best references, but ask all those questions, how were the staff? And how flexible were they, all those things that will help you make that decision. Request layouts. I mean, be really specific, like have them show you exactly how your event would lay out in their space. They know their space better than anybody else. They usually have ways of giving you layouts. If not, I would partner with somebody to do that, like an audiovisual company. And they should be able to show you exactly how, so it'll give you, at least on paper, an understanding of how it may look. And also ask them if there are similar events that are going to happen, like, can I come look at them? Yeah.
And I think the one warning or just a heads up about layouts from the venue, sometimes they're not, the perspective of the ratio is not great. So they're showing you how many people fit in, but then they're not considering what like an AV team would bring in, which would be stage. Your stage trussing line, stuff that will actually push things out of the room further. So that's the measurements on the websites of hotels. They're not actual architectural measurements. They're just,
don't go with the ones that are on the website. Ask for ones that are specific to what you're going to bring in.
Yeah. It'll help you with a mess when you're on site and going, oh my gosh, we need 20 more tables and you don't have the space.
Exactly.
So, okay.
Exactly.
So some more factors for your decisions. So location. So let's talk about location.
Yeah, I think when you're actually to the point where you need to make a decision, I mean, location of where it is one of the most important things. I mean, literally think through the process of how your guest is going to experience getting to that venue, as far as how they're commuting there, if they're how they're getting there. What is the parking situation? Like literally location, how easy it is for them to be there is really one of the key decisions I think that you need to take into play.
This is actually super interesting because I remember being on site visits with you, and there was a lot of reasons why the venue was the perfect venue, but when it came down to it, its location near the airport and some of the businesses around it weren't right, and that was like,
right.
Oh my gosh, it blew my mind that's the kind of thing that
it may have been the perfect venue, but maybe that place of business that was right next door to it is not where you wanted to have your organization, or be represented next to that place of business. So
it's not something people would normally consider. They're really focused on this beautiful room, and then unless they're watching all the things around it and their actual true visit from the guests or the executives that are speaking, like that's such a full encompassing thought that you bring. It's crazy.
And then I'd say the next factor is just the space and setup flexibility. We talked about this already. It's like, how flexible is it going to be? Is it going to be able to grow with you if you grow? Is it, can you bring in the different venues? I mean, that's flexibility in itself. So how...
You mean like partners or?
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
Being flexible in all those areas as well as... being able to just literally fit the amount of space you want and spaces you need.
Got it. Okay. How about factors for your, including budget?
Yeah, of course, budget is, has to be a factor. I would say a lot of them are able to help you at least come up with an inclusive budget, but make sure you ask them to the venue can help you price out things, and literally you can say, like, can you please give me inclusive of your proposal, include all of these things, include rental of certain things that you may need to have them bring in that you need. So try to get as inclusive a budget as possible. So you're actually when you're comparing maybe venues, you're comparing apples to apples. Right. And if, for example, also pairing with, your production company, it may be less expensive to go into this venue because of certain things than another venue. Right. So you want to make sure that you take those factors into place as well.
Power, rigging points, things that the venue might control that it's not something you are automatically thinking about. That can be a big part of the budget later on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for all those points. I think there's some awesome things for people to think through. If you're looking for a pre-made checklist as you're going through event venues, Heroic has a great one on the website that you can check out and download. So it's a great piece to take with you as you're looking and doing site visits.
Yes, check it out. There's a lot of great stuff in there that will give you a good heads up on what you might want to be watching for.
Yeah, so we'll get to questions here in just a minute, but I just wanted to mention a few more things quick. So if you need help with the AV for your next event, Heroic would love to have a conversation with you and just hear more about what you have going on and give you any insights that they have.
Yes, we would love to hear about what event you have coming up and if we can help you with a site visit on things you might need to consider for production. We would love to help. Give us a call.
So we thank you guys so much for taking some time out of your day. We appreciate it. We know half an hour is, harder to carve out than we'd like it to be. We are going to get to a couple questions that we see coming in here. So we'll start out with one here. What are things, Stacy, that you see that are immediate warning or maybe no-go signs when you're visiting a venue?
I think two things. One is when they have a lot of exclusives that are not tested. In other words, I'm coming in, they have an exclusive, maybe audiovisual vendor that I've never used. That is risky from my standpoint, because I don't necessarily know how that would work. I would rather maybe select a venue that has the flexibility of bringing in the partners that I know and trust and can rely on. And then the second one is just making sure if I come in and I see any type of construction or anything like that, not that that's a no, absolute
Could be
no.
a warning sign though, right?
It can be a warning sign of something that could come into play, and you just really want to make sure you understand if there's remodels or any construction going on, how it's going to impact your experience.
So what happens if you can't get a site visit in the season that your event is going to be? Then what do I do?
Well, a lot of times you're not going to be able to do it, or it's just, it's too far out, so being able to wait that long is just not going to work. So I think you definitely, if it's a city like a cold weather city like Minneapolis, you just think about all those experiences of if your people are commuting in the snow, rain, cold, take all those considerations in mind and put that hat on while you're experiencing the beautiful weather site inspection, because that's going to be a completely different experience of trying to get there in July versus in January if there's a snowstorm. So you want to ask all the questions, and then you also could, if it's assuming it's a city that you're not in, because that's probably why you're not able to do a site inspection in season, then you ask around, find people in that city and ask them, the industry experts in that city, like, what have you experienced at that venue in January?
Yeah. So one more quick question. How far ahead of the process do you usually start your site scouting in an ideal world?
Yeah, I mean, Steve, you chime in here too, but I like it so is dependent. Like for large conferences where you're buying out the city, we are looking at sites years and years in advance.
Wow.
But most of the stuff you do is not that way, and so it's really dependent on the size of it. And to be perfectly honest, all of our timeframes are getting extremely scrunched.
Yep.
So
that's what we're seeing too.
Yeah. So you are sometimes trying to book out even a month and trying to find a venue. So there isn't necessarily an ideal time frame anymore. I just don't think that exists.
I think what comes with that, if the time frames are getting shorter and shorter, it's all the more reason why you need experienced people to weigh in on, like, okay, here's what we're thinking. We got to make a decision fast. If you jump into too fast without the experience of understanding the venue, without understanding the context, like Stacy's type of person brings, it's very critical. And I think it's got to happen. And then you have to bring in the people that can help make that happen faster if you need to.
Yeah. One more quick question for you, Stacy, just as a kind of inspiration for any of the event planners on here. What's something that's getting you excited right now or saving your life as an event planner?
Oh, wow. We are planning an event for a nonprofit. So it's totally different experience sometimes when you're in the corporate world, planning for your fellow team members.
Yeah.
And when you get out in the community and plan something for a nonprofit, and you get to see the joy of the families that you're bringing. So you're bringing this beautiful experience for them. So I love that work, and it's valuable in a very different way, but so fun to work on.
Yeah, a different kind of excitement you get from people's faces as opposed to team members who've seen them all the time.
Exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah.
You're lucky.
Thank you.
You do cool stuff, Stacy.
Well, we are out of time for today, but if you have more questions, we have the email addresses for our wonderful experts here today. So if you want to shoot them a note, if you have any more questions, they're happy to help you. Again, we'll be sending the recording for today's webinar so you can review it as well as the slides. So we appreciate you taking time and spending it with us today. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
and
you.
Thank you, Stacy.